Well, hello everybody. Hello, and welcome back. Welcome back to the show. Welcome. It's been a while. Let's forget all the pleasantries. Let's forget all the hey, I haven't seen you in a while. Whoa, what have you been up to? Blah 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 blah. Forget about it. Let's just forget about it and focus on what we're really here for, and that is pure, unadulterated conversation about something amazing that has happened in the past couple of days. Something that has just been so hyped up for weeks, for months, for year since the last time it's happened. And that is, of course, this brand new, wonderful, it's not brand new, but this past weekend, we came out of the E3 conference. E3 is the big video game for like party, if you would. All the indie game developers come out. They really go to bat. They show all the consumers. They show everybody else what they've been working on as far as maybe tech goes, software goes. Developers are coming out with new games or updates to old games, but we'll get into the games and the software in just a second. Why don't we start off this evening with something that's a little easier to talk about, kind of tiptoe ourselves back into the water, and let's get used to the stream being back up. Let's get used to the podcast being recorded again, and just breathe. So tonight we're going to start off first with the tech that was introduced, talked about, shown off, and all sorts of fun things like that. Now, clearly I'm not at E3. E3 doesn't start till Tuesday, but over the course of the weekend coming up to Tuesday, each of the major game developers and each of the major tech developers had their own press conferences to kind of go over what they have coming out. And mostly it was all about the games. However, there was a little bit of tech news, including the big one, which was the introduction of Microsoft's very new, yet very similar, yet new and beast-like Xbox One X. The Xbox One X is kind of like the PS4 Pro for Xbox. Now, last year at Sony's own conference, they announced two new PS4s. One which was the Slim, which is the little guy, a little bit more powerful than the original PlayStation 4, and they also introduced the PlayStation 4 Pro. 4K device, HDR, straight out of the box, can support the PS4, the PSVR that was also announced. All this new stuff, beefed up. Games are going to run faster, load screens are going to be shorter, all these great things that made PS4 players so excited to play the new titles that they have coming up with it. And also get a touch of some of the older titles. Will get like that little bump up in graphics design. It would just look beautiful. It would look like you're actually there. A year goes by, and we started hearing rumors of Microsoft coming out with something called Project Scorpio. And they were teasing it every once in a while that, we've got something going on, guys. It's coming. Don't worry. Then about a month ago, about March, February of 2017, Microsoft says, all right, here you go. Right before E3 comes out, and we decide to unveil this amazing Project Scorpio console. Here's the specs. And judging by the specs, this new console was a beast. This thing ran faster than PS4 Pro. It ran in 4K. It spec-wise, on paper, it made PS4 Pro look like PS4 Rookie. it was definitely something that I don't know if Sony was really like shaking in their boots about, but it was definitely something that, you know, if you didn't have an Xbox and you were sitting there saying, all right, Microsoft, I've got a PlayStation 4, I've got a PC, but I kind of don't want, you know, if I want the Xbox, maybe I'll get it for the 4K or the faster thing. Well, Microsoft answered, and at Microsoft's press conference prior to E3, the first thing that they came out and announced was the Xbox One X. Project Scorpio was just the project name for it. It turns out Scorpio is actually what they're calling, the CPU within the device, within the console. But it is smaller than the Xbox, a little larger than the Xbox One S, which is their slim version, but faster than both. And without getting into all the tech stuff, because that's what they did at the press conference, you know, they had one guy specifically come out to just pretty much read out keywords. Like, he was reading out his resume at an interview, like, yes, I have great teamwork skills, and I've got great leadership skills, and I've got great time management skills. Instead of doing all of that, I'm not going to really go over the specs. However, looking at it on paper, and I'm looking at it through Kotaku, this thing is a beast. It's got 4K abilities. However, it has something that the PS4 Pro does not have. That was interesting. And it was the ability to realize whether or not the television or monitor system that it is hooked up to, if it can run 4K, it'll upscale the, you know, an older game, or it'll play the newer 4K games at 4K. But if you're connected to 1080p, or even, dare I say, 720p, it will recognize it and downscale it to make it run at a similar, to make it run just as smooth. So it might not be 4K, you know, beautiful pixels and you know, for racing, for Forza, the water coming up when you're when it's raining out, and all this other kind of stuff, but it will showcase, you know, it will sit there and it will actually know how to downgrade all of that kind of cool stuff. So the ability to do that, where it could switch itself automatically, that's something that's to me more interesting to have than a device that can just play 4K or play it at 1080. Excuse me. So it's definitely something worth taking a look at. Now, Sony and Nintendo, and even at the PC gaming show, they were all touting their own tech. Sony was saying, you know, we've got some great games coming out for VR. Even some of the developers like Bethesda, EA, Ubisoft, and the Nintendo, not really Nintendo, but and at the PC gaming show, they were again really like trying to push the whole like VR experience. In fact, Intel announced that they're going to try to make a VR esport, which for me, I personally don't like VR. It's not that I don't get it. I understand it, and I understand it in the video game aspect of it. It's just I haven't been sold on it yet. And I heard, you know, from other streamers on Twitch that if I were to play Resident Evil 7 on VR, then like my eyes will open and I have seen the light, or in Resident Evil's purposes, not seen the light. And then I'll be on board with any and all sort of VR experiences out there. Now, I as much as I would love to play that game, I'm not a horror game type person. So that alone won't really interest me. And I haven't played that much of Fallout 3, and I have never even thought to buy Fallout 4 or Elder Scrolls, which are the other two big games from Bethesda that they were announcing for VR. And I'm sorry, but you will never, ever, ever see me play virtual fishing. I love real fishing, but for some reason, virtual fishing just is a huge, huge no in my case. So the Xbox One X, was the device to beat. And from the announcement, which was pretty much all together, along with the guy reading off his resume, the resume of amazing specs, the rest of the conference, everything was pretty much taken as if all the games announced at Microsoft's news conference was done in 4K. I gotta say, some of those games looked stunning, and we'll get to what games they were in the next part of the show. But it didn't. I own an Xbox One. I've had it since it first came out. Or maybe like a year after I bought it. I've got plenty of games on it. I play Destiny on it. I play I got Grand Theft Auto 5 on it, I think. I think I have Battlefield 1. Like I've got enough game. I've got some games to play on it. Again, that's where I have Fallout 3. So I don't see myself getting the Xbox One X anytime soon. That being said, it seems as if everyone, Sony and Microsoft, not everyone, but Sony and Microsoft are kind of doing this thing where they want to push their consoles to the next level. However, other than trying to go into full virtual reality where every game is virtual reality, it seems as though 4K was really the next step for the consoles. Getting the games to look as good as their cinematics, cutscenes, is pretty much where Microsoft and Sony both want to go. They want you to feel as if you're in the game and without having to wear a headset. I mean, Sony, yes, does have the PSVR, and they do have a lot of games coming out, that will actually put you in the games. However, for the majority of gamers who aren't Twitch streamers or who don't game for a living, being immersed in the game is seeing how beautiful it is on your television, is noticing the fact that, I wouldn't even mind if I had no idea whether or not I was in a cutscene or actually in a game. Because a lot of the times when these video games come out, the trailers before as they're being announced, and then the cutscenes during the actual gameplay are just beautiful, and the facial reconstruction, getting their mouths to move if they're speaking to you, facial expression. Getting their bodies to move in a fluid way that the regular body moves. If they're out in a desert, maybe there's tumbleweeds. If you're in on a frosty planet in Destiny or even Star Wars or something like that, if you're on Hoth and it's snowing out, you want all of these games to make you feel like you're part of it. And then when you go back into the game, there's a lot more rendering and there's a lot more coding and processing going on, because now instead of it just being a cinematic, hey, we're just playing through, it's just basically playing a video, something like this where it's just playing a video. Now we actually have to put in, all right, someone's controlling it. They have a controller in their hand. They want the person to move. They want the character to shoot, to aim, to duck, to hide, to roll out of the way. There's a lot going on in that process, and because most of the games are faster moving than some of the cinematic scenes, we do fall into this whole loss of quality when it comes to games versus when it comes to gameplay versus cinematics. A lot of the times too, when you're watching software, when we're watching game releases like at E3, or when Sony does their own news conference or Nintendo does their own treehouse, you are almost, you sit there and say, I want to see gameplay, I want to see gameplay, I want to see gameplay, because you want to make sure that these companies, the developers, are able to keep up with the amazing specs that are coming out with these new devices. So as far as Microsoft and Sony goes, it's now up to them to come up with these next generation consoles. And with the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, this doesn't seem like a full step forward. It seems kind of like a half step forward. They're not wow next gen consoles. If I were to get a PS4, I most likely get a Slim or the original. However, the Slim was built a little bit is younger, so the specs in it are a little bit better and a little bit faster than the regular PS4. But I don't see myself, and I don't see myself, unless my television were to go out tomorrow, I don't see myself running out to get a 4K television anytime soon. So my games are still going to look as if they're on the 1080p, as if they're on the regular consoles that they're meant to be on. Now, I know PS4 and PS4 Slim, they had an update when the PlayStation Pro came out to enable HDR support. The dynamic lighting, when you're walking through and it's a sunset, you could see the dynamic lighting changing around with you. You could see the shadows while the sun is setting through the trees and all that kind of stuff. There is, they did get that that support, in which allows, gives the games a little bit more depth. I don't know if the Xbox One and the Xbox One S are going to get it, but I know the Xbox One X will have it as part of its beefed up system. Whether or not Microsoft is looking into VR, I don't know. I've seen on Twitter, and I've seen in some things, that people who are speaking to the likes of Phil Spencer and others higher up in the Microsoft scale, saying that they're really trying to save the VR or the augmented reality for the HoloLens, which Microsoft is also developing. However, they're developing it almost as, like, every time we see it, it's a standalone product. It's not necessarily something that you could plug into your Xbox and play with. We did see them playing with the Minecraft, having it build up on a coffee table. We are starting to get some of these, a lot of the tech companies out there, the latest of which is Apple at their own keynote, has come out saying that they're pushing for more augmented reality. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if when we get iOS 11, that when they come out with the first big update, because so many people want to try out this new augmented reality, I wouldn't be surprised if in Messages or Facebook Messenger or even I could be wrong, but Snapchat or Instagram, if we're messaging people saying, like, I really want a cup of coffee, but instead of saying it emoji, you take a picture of a coffee table or your kitchen table with a cup of coffee pointing to, and you draw on it and you point to it and say, I want, and then send that out as like an augmented reality type thing. I wouldn't be surprised if something like that comes out. And Microsoft has been working with the HoloLens for a long time. I saw on one of the, this is why I'm broke, or dude, I want that website, that the HoloLens developer edition is about like $3,000. So it's a long ways away. Virtual reality is still not for the general consumer. If you want, you could get I don't know where my goggles are. Oh, they're below me. But anyway, you could get the free ones, or the $60 to $70 ones, that like the Google Daydream glasses, and the whatchamacallit, what's it called? The Samsung Gear headset that you have to put a phone in and then connect your headphones so you can hear and see everything like that. So that is, kind of where everything is going. As far as Microsoft is concerned, they have no plans right now to bring the HoloLens to Xbox. They would rather keep it so that it could work with PCs, or just work as a standalone where you could connect it to your PC and like upload whatever you need to upload, or connect to it wirelessly, or what have you. But it doesn't look like Microsoft will be putting any sort of VR, any sort of like VR resources the same way Sony did for PSVR, which for me is fine. Again, two of the major VR announcements, other than some of the indie games that they came out with, was Bethesda's Fallout 4 VR and their Elder Scrolls VR, which, hey, I think, for those of you who are Bethesda fans, like, that's all for you. Go for it. However, I do know that a lot of people were upset because if you do go on Steam, you'll see that Fallout 4 VR is an extra $60. Ruh-roh. But again, we will get to that in just a little bit when we discuss software. So as far as the tech goes, PC Gaming Show, Intel announced some, they did it like a 10-minute, hey, look at us, we got new products coming out. They are trying to push for a esport in VR, and they have a game that came out for it. In fact, the single player looked cool because it kind of looked like the movie Gravity, where you're out in space and you're doing spacewalks and things go wrong and you're floating there with your VR mask on and all that kind of stuff. Their multiplayer was more like Ultimate Frisbee in Tron. If you're not familiar with the movies of Tron, I definitely watch it. The original came out in the 80s, and then the new one came out, like there was a sequel, Tron Legacy, that came out in around the 2010 era. And apparently they're working on a third one right now, and Jared Leto is part of it. But I digress. The subsequent the esport, the multiplayer, the competitive game for this Intel VR esports was it was very slow motion. It was boring. It looked as if people will sit there and, if there was a huge sport event with CS:GO, with Hearthstone, with Heroes of the Storm, there's a whole event, like a weekend dedicated to all these tournaments, fighting games, actual sports games, and all that kind of stuff. And they're like, yeah, and we're going to introduce this new Intel esports with VR. That would be like the bathroom match at any sort of WWE pay-per-view. There's always one match in a WWE pay-per-view where people just walk up, where people just like get up and go to the bathroom, and they come back and the match is still going on and you don't know why. So that is essentially what the Intel's VR competitive looks like. Again, I'm a bit skewed because I'm not a fan of VR at all, and I don't ever plan on unless I don't want to say I don't ever plan on it, but unless whatchamacallit, unless one of my absolute favorite games of all time, which is Full Throttle by Lucasfilm, gets VR treatment, or something like Star Wars Battlefront 2 gets like an entire, like every space battle is VR, then yeah, maybe I might invest in it. However, right now I'm not looking to get a Vive, an Oculus, or even the PSVR. So I can't, I can't really say whether or not it is all up to, it is everything that I want.